The Tower of Adversity is one of the two endgame game modes Wuthering Waves has to offer at the moment, with the main allure of clearing it essentially boiling down to more rewards in the form of airstrikes and also notably Echo EXP that I'm sure everyone is dying to get more of. This is exactly why in this video I will break down everything I know, including my personal best strategies to tackle the tower, potentially helping you grab these rewards before they reset even if you are a free-to-play player. Let's dive right in. To start things off, I will briefly touch on the different zones of the Tower of Adversity, starting with the Stable Zone, which is basically your introduction to the tower, and it only comprises of 4 floors. And once you complete these 4 floors, you unlock the Experiment Zone that has 8 floors now for you to clear. Clearing the 2 sides of the Experiment Zone then unlocks the final Hazard Zone, which is made up of 10 floors and 3 sides, and unlike the previous 2 zones that does not reset, the Hazard Zone resets periodically, making it a key progression objective if you want some renewable source of pool income. With that out of the way, we need to first understand why people always say you need multiple teams for the Tower of Adversity, and it's everything to do with the Vigor mechanic. Every character starts with 10 Vigor in each zone, and using a unit to clear floors reduces this Vigor amount based on the Vigor cost of a stage, with the later floors costing, of course, more Vigor. Vigor, unlike your wave plates, also do not regenerate over time, hence there are limits to how many times you can use a unit to clear in a certain zone, although this Vigor can be refunded for the units you clear a stage with if you were to use the reset function to remove them effectively from the clear. With this in mind, using the Experiment Zone as an example, clearing 4 stages require a total of 10 Vigor, and given how there's 2 sets of 4 floors each, we will need a minimum of 20 Vigor, which implies a minimum of 2 teams, although you can technically clear it through 2 solo units, but that will still constitute 2 teams in this sense. For the Hazard Zone, the addition of the 3rd Hazard Tower implies that you will now need 3 teams, but this guide will not focus on it too much as they contain level 100 enemies and it is basically not clearable at this moment unless you are an Omega Whale. Hence, knowing that we will require 2 teams for both the Experiment Zone and 2 sides of the Hazard Zones, the different ways you can assign the teams are as such. The most straightforward way people will go for is to assign 1 team to clear 1 side each, but this is probably the worst Pepega setup early on as it requires you to have 2 equally well invested teams. Instead, what I recommend is to employ a setup with having your stronger team of the 2 clear the first and the last floors for both sides, while the weaker team takes on the middle 2 floors. This is simply because the enemy levels progresses as we go towards the later floors, hence the stronger team should tackle the more difficult floors. Alternatively, if you have 2 similarly invested teams, you should assign a team with an AoE focused DPS like Havoc Rover going for the middle section, and the team with the single target focused main DPS such as Ling Yang for the first and the last floors. This is because the last floor also typically contains single bosses while the middle sections have multiple enemy spots. Now eventually, when you have built 3 teams for the Hazard Zones, you can then shift the stronger single target focus team to clear the Hazard Tower with the 2 boss floors. Another thing you definitely want to take note when selecting the right team has to be the tower buff, and more importantly so, the elemental resistance. Using the left side of the tower in this current Hazard Tower cycle as an example, you can see this favors arrow DPS as it is boosted, but what's more important is that you absolutely do not, I repeat, do not want to use an Electro DPS against this last floor, as Tempest Memphis has an extremely high Electro damage resist, which will make Electro DPS like Calcharo totally helpless on the floor begging for mercy against it, so this is something I want to place extra emphasis on. Granted, the best way to go about this is to just use the DPS with a matching bonus for the last floor of each side, as you can clearly see how conveniently none of the enemies are resisted. For instance, Jiyan on the left side with the arrow damage boost and Calcharo on the right side where electro damage is boosted. The lower floors can be full cleared relatively easily by any non-resisted DPS, so there shouldn't be anything to worry about on that end. Now that we have the basic setup laid out, I will share with you my personal tips starting with how you should be investing in your units to make sure you get the most out of your investment, be it in your weapons, your echoes, or even general resonance EXP with the Tower Adversity in mind. For a start, the level distribution of your team should follow the general prioritization from DPS to sub DPS/buffer, and then lastly to your healers. Using unit level 30 as a starting point, your DPS unit should be leveled to level 60 with the relevant skill upgrades unlocked, with your sub DPS being either at level 40 or 50, and then your healers being left at level 40 for the most part. This works great for a typical hyper carry team setup such as Jiyan, Mortar Fee, Verena team, as most if not all of the damage output relies on Jiyan, while Mortar Fee and Verena acts as buffer for him, making it less of a priority to invest in Mortar Fee and Verena's levels. However, something to note is that if you were to employ this investment strategy on a quick swap team like Danjing, Jianxing and Havoc Rover for example, it will be less effective as this is a dual DPS setup, which is also why I personally feel quick swap teams at the start might not be the best since you have limited resources. Now moving on to the weapons and echoes, a big feature of the tower adversity that you definitely want to abuse is that you are able to share or swap the weapons and echoes freely between your teams. Hence, instead of investing in 2 or 3 sets of weapons and echoes for your units on different teams, you can focus your efforts in making one great set which can greatly boost the power levels for all of your team members while saving resources. An example would be Verena, Baizhi and Jianxing all sharing one rejuvenating glow set, while Verena and Baizhi goes on further to share one rectifier weapon. By doing this, you can utilize the best weapons on multiple units while also reducing the time you spend on farming echoes and the amount of echo EXP and tuners you require for building a team. This can be done easily by clicking on the details section when you're selecting your units in the tower without you even exiting the tower UI, so this saves you as much time as possible to do it efficiently so you're able to clear different stages while changing their sets up. But I really hope Kuro can add an echo loadup feature to save my sanity and maybe yours too. Of course, at this point you might be thinking to yourself that you only have one team and have no way of accessing the Tower of Hazard to grab up the rewards before it resets in 7 days, and well, you actually could with a niche trick utilizing the reset function, as the requirement for accessing the Tower of Hazard requires you to clear all the stages, but you can bypass this by clearing first 4 floors of one side and then resetting all of those 4 teams to obtain back your Vigor to then clear the 4 floors on the second side. This effectively counts as clearing both sides and it will unlock the Tower of Hazard, and you should be able to grab some juicy airstrikes before the reset happens with just one team. Also, just to briefly cover the exchange shop, if you were to eventually fully clear the hazard zone, you will get 600 hazard records each zone reset, but that is not enough to clear the shop each month. I will definitely prioritize getting the Echo EXP and Premium Tuners even after the potential buffs that are coming, but you can grab up the Monkey Skin if you so wish, as it's only 120 hazard records. One thing to note however is that there appears to be bug when using certain alternate versions of an Echo, resulting in less damage, so better test it out if you do get it. Regardless though, at the end of the day, progressing in the Tower of Adversity requires you to play well, especially to meet the time requirements for full clears, but for the folks that have skill issues like I do, investing and obtaining the right echoes for your units is equally as important, which is why you should definitely check out this video I have here breaking down the optimal echo setups. I'll see you guys over there. This is Corky Gachas, signing off.